Hey people, what up? J-Love here again with another video for y'all, as I do every day. Today I'm doing something quite different than I've done before. I'm going to channel an entity for you. A little background before I do that. I went to a weird school, the only Buddhist-founded school that is also accredited in the United States, for undergrads at least, Naropa University, and there I met a lot of interesting people. And my girlfriend at the time's friend did lots of spirit guide channeling and introduced me to my spirit guide, whose name he revealed as Job, which, much like Abraham, despite the biblical seeming sort of feel to it, it has nothing to do with anything. It's really just well, I could let him explain it to you more, but he's just an entity that likes to give wisdom to planet Earth. So, without further ado, hmm. Well, here I am. Job am I am Job. And there are so many things I could say, so many things I could do. You know, I'm curious, are there any people live on this live chat? Hello people, if you are there, then say something to me. Say something. Here I am Job. If you have any questions, just post them and I will get to them. But for now, why am I here? Who am I? I am a configuration of personality, of energy, of ways of seeing the world. I am coming to you at this point in time because Jordan doesn't always know how to access his highest self, which is the same thing as what I am. I am his highest self. I am the highest self, which comes in many forms. Ultimately, it's the ultimate wisdom attraction point, you might say, for whatever needs to come into the world at any given time. So, in a very general sense, I am simply the a specific iteration of the energy of God, you could say. Ultimately, it's not really important how you conceptualize me. What is important is what I have to offer. You know, the message is more important than the messenger. If you're curious about more the metaphysics of it, I'd be happy to expound on that, but metaphysics are entertainment in this case. What's important is the core of the message I have, which it's much easier to have a message if there's a question to answer something that someone wants to know. So I'll have to provide both the question and the answer because there's no one here to question. I could tap into a question that Jordan has, but something that would actually be more useful at this point is to actually ask what question would be most useful for the most number of people. So the question that would be the most useful for the most number of people is, what is the highest good and the path to that good? That's really the ultimate question that anyone can ever ask about anything. And the answer to that question, what is the highest good and what is the path to that good, really depends upon the individual. And so the answer to that question isn't something that I can actually provide you. That is the question, though. That is the question. The answer to the question, what is the most important question, is what is the highest path? What is the highest... well, that's a simplified way of saying it. What is the highest path? What is the highest goal? And what is the path to achieve that highest goal? So, what is the highest path? Very simple. What is the best thing I could be doing right now to move myself forward towards... there's just too many variables, too many ways to conceptualize it. It's love is the best expression that I have for it. But what's most important for the greatest number of people throughout all time is what is right for me. It is questioning oneself, what does my deepest wisdom want from me at this moment? And then listening to that. So, one moment. So the highest good that you can do, on average, this isn't always true, ultimately what's the highest good at any given point in the universe is exactly what's happening. But in order to get in touch with the wisdom point which will leverage you into the greatest springboard to move the universe forward, is generally, on average, from this point of view, from this being that exists right here, what is the highest wisdom that I could express through action at this moment? Action can be a mental action. It could be directing your attention somewhere. It could be thinking about something that you need to think about. It could be taking very direct action in the world and doing something, moving towards some habit, planning something, connecting to somebody. There are innumerable actions, some of them extremely subtle, some of them, one of the most important actions that a person can take is to do nothing. Oftentimes, simply relaxing, relaxing into space itself and allowing something that is hidden to arise. So it's meditation in a way. That's what meditation is really about, is allowing the depths to surface. So what is the greatest good? And the reason this question is so important is because for any living being, for any living being for any at any point in the universe that we live in, there are a nearly infinite number of unknowns. There are nearly an infinite number of possibilities of things that could be happening. And so, in order to tap into light, love, happiness, wisdom, truth, the higher elements, which I am here to represent for you, in order to tap into the higher part of yourself at any given moment, it's a point of disconnection from what has manifested right now and merging back into what you might call the source of all things. The further down we get down any given road, the more that road starts to skew from the original intention, and the more complex the universe becomes, the more as things evolve, as the future unfolds, everything is continuously becoming more complex and more there needs to be finer tunes and direction the further down you get. And so the reason it is so important to do this exercise, you might call it, of stepping back and asking, okay, what's the greatest wisdom? What is the greatest good? What is the path to that good? What is the action that I should take to move forward? Is because in one moment it may be one thing, but almost certainly in the next moment it's going to be something else. And it always changes. And so it's an infinite practice. You can continue doing it for your entire life. And in fact, just to demonstrate how good this practice is, I'll do it right now for you. So right now in this moment, for me, for Job, what is the highest good that I could be doing right now? That's how we started this, but now that some time has lapsed, there's a new direction to go in. So I asked myself that question and let myself fall into the space of unknowing, the space of that question. And the answer I get in this moment, only you can know the answer to the question, is to relax, to love. So that's what I do. I relax, I let go, and just feel love for the person who is on the other side of this this live stream. I know there aren't actually any people on this live stream right now because I have 0 subscribers. Maybe there is. I can't actually tell. I've never done a live stream before, so I don't know how to tell what's happening. Yeah, I don't actually know. I don't think someone's watching, but I could be wrong. Anyhow, it's useful to learn to embrace silence. So, in the world we live in, silence is not welcomed. Neither is imperfection of any kind, which silence is considered to be one form of imperfection. You know, to have a tight, well put together presentation, there should be no overly long spaces anywhere. That means you didn't plan well enough. Just like I should have my hair right and have the room probably look nicer. Silence is the most fundamental error in human society. It's a lack of connection. It's a lack of communication And it's unfortunate because the more you welcome all imperfection, silence especially, the more you are able to tap into that very wisdom which I just spoke of, the wisdom of openness, of not knowing, of having an intention to have a higher intention, to let higher intention inform your action, and then letting that come through simply by having a natural habit of when you feel yourself getting lost in any action or any one direction and something doesn't feel right, you can feel something's off, or you just get to the end of what you were doing and there's nothing left to do, rather than instantly jumping into something new, you can just let yourself fall back into the silence. And it's a natural way of engaging that same wisdom within you, allowing the universe to pick the exact moment at which you start to speak again, to pick what you start speaking about again, to let the connections in your brain find their timing in alignment with whatever quantum reality is manifesting at that moment. And so it's embracing the silence. It's embracing the discomfort with the silence too, because there's a natural discomfort as human beings that arises when we think that we are not supposed to be silent. Then there's a reaction to that, and by embracing, by being with that, by accepting that, rather than disconnecting, which is the natural sort of counterpoint to whenever we feel discomfort, we usually automatically disconnect. It's actually connecting to the discomfort itself and to the cause of the discomfort, in this case, the silence. And so there's no rule here. You should always connect with any discomfort or pain. But it's wise not to habitually disconnect either, which is certainly a trap, which is certainly a restriction of the potential of what we can be. We can always be on the way up, be evolving. We can start every action that we take with an intention to heighten consciousness, to heighten the heighten who we are, frankly. One thing that's interesting is in channeling, you may assume that because the entity Job is being channeled right now, that Jordan isn't here. That would be incorrect. That's not necessarily the case ever, though sometimes it is, in a sense. But Job is an intention to the highest good. It's a certain manifestation of the highest good. It's a there are many different ways you could interpret it. The manifestation of Job could be presumed to be a certain neural pattern, a certain set of neural pathways in the brain of Jordan, which he reverts to, which are already used at times in different ways, and so it's really cutting off a part of himself and tapping into a different part of himself, simply on a, you can look in the brain and actually see what part of the brain is Job. That's one understanding that's a very simple way that doesn't exclude any atheist's understanding of what channeling is. It's just a parlor trick in that sense, although there's a profundity to it, no matter, I think, how secularly you see it. If that is the case, and indeed it is completely a trick of sorts, then there's still a different part of the brain that's being tapped into that has certain viewpoints and ways of seeing the world, and in that way it could be useful if that part of oneself is not always tapped into in that way. It brings a different viewpoint. It brings a different way of being. Alternatively, it could be a quantum sort of. There's a without trying to explain this whole metaphysical worldview, and it's essentially, from a theistic point of view, the universe has a purpose and everything happens for a reason. And channeling allows a certain set of events to happen by tapping into some aspect of the infinite creativity and intelligence of the universe to come through this channel in a way that serves this being, the beings that are connected to, all simultaneously, through a spontaneous occurrence of whatever needs to occur. So there are certain limitations that are present because Jordan's mind has certain limitations, but those limitations are altered, in a sense, because they're given permission. Quite simply, they're given permission to be altered. And so, whereas if Jordan was speaking as himself, he would certainly say a certain set of things, another set of things are allowed to manifest from a deeper or higher realm in accordance with whatever the universe needs. And that's another way of seeing channeling. There are many other ways. Another way of seeing channeling is certain psychoanalytic, seeing that there are different selves within us, different entities or different energetic patterns that want to express themselves and influence each other, influence the world in different ways, with different needs, with different experiences. And so those different entities are what is channeled, and the purpose for them being channeled is simply because they want to be channeled, or they want each other to be channeled, they want to get something from each other, they want to give something to each other. Much like the multi-personalities disorder that some people have, except they're cooperative rather than uncooperative. there are other forms of channeling as well, other ways to channel, other channeling, ways of seeing channeling, I should say, other ways of seeing channeling as well. All valid, all true in some sense or another, some perhaps more true than others. So again, the silence there. Usually in the silence there are thoughts that are also coming through. It's useful to notice those as well. Our thoughts are indications of how we see the world and how we interpret the world and how we interact with the world on a subtle level. And so being aware of those thoughts is a powerful first step. Although even just in that one step of noticing what you were thinking, your whole entire reality can change. If you like, you may close your eyes or not and notice if you have any salient feeling at any point in your body, physical or emotional. And just notice that. And you can notice that with any feeling, with any experience, there is a infinite level of subtlety that can be experienced within that experience. So within that experience that you just experienced, you can notice if there's any texture to it, any flavor to it, any quality to it. Where are the ridges? Where are the lines? What direction are they pointing in? Where's the pressure? And can you enjoy that? Can you enjoy sensation? Can you enjoy emotion? Or if you can't, can you accept that you can't and fully not enjoy whatever you're feeling? Can you embrace reality as it is and be intimate with it? And can you listen to the core of your being? Without expectation, without knowing why you're listening to the core of your being, just let yourself fall into it out of curiosity, out of willingness to assume that maybe there is something more you can learn about reality, about yourself, about God. that there's always more you can learn. And that the deeper you go into yourself, the more you will have to offer. Play. 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 Play is a useful thing. It's a useful thing, but not just a useful thing. It is also a thing which, you might say, is enjoyable, is for its own ecstatic enjoyment, an end in itself, which justifies the reason that you can do it anytime, because it's both useful, and not only useful, it is also a wonderful thing inherently. So play simply means you might say to do something for its own sake. So why am I weaving my head back and forth? Just because I feel like it. That's why I do many things I do, not because there's some divine ordination or higher purpose in a sense that there's a clear goal and reason that I must do this thing that I'm doing. No, instead, play is its own reward and generates energy, generates creativity, generates goodwill, connection, a lot of things, generates many things that are useful things. So my recommendation is to play. What's interesting about channeling is it gives a certain restriction and a certain tension. There's a certain tension in any channeled state, because if that tension is released, then the channel falls back into their natural state and naturally becomes who they normally are. So if, say, I was to attempt to channel this state indefinitely, at some point I would very likely forget that I'm channeling, or be forced somehow into a not be in a channeling state because it's not appropriate. There are certain other restrictions as well that are very interesting. In a channeled state, there is a tendency to always measure what is said and done carefully, and then to have an unusual degree of confidence in whatever is said and done in that state as well. Because in channeling there's an assumption that channeling is contacting some higher wisdom or some higher intelligence or some truth in some way. And usually when we speak, usually when we interact and communicate, well, in a sense we are channeling, no matter whether we're in a channeled state or not. It has those implications washed from it, or rather doesn't have them imposed upon it. And so a non-channeled state has a very loose feel to it in comparison with the channeled state. It's something that's true of spiritual circles generally. Generally in spiritual life, spiritual subculture, people have certain restrictions, have ways of thinking and ways of being that they ingrain in themselves. You could say that, I suppose, about most any subculture. It's certainly noticeable in spirituality, especially because in spiritual subculture there's a tendency to believe that spirituality is a release from all restrictions, from all expectations. And so when those expectations and restrictions have actually increased, and one notices that either from the outside or more horrifyingly from the inside, from one's own experience, one becomes suddenly disillusioned with their own hypocritical way of being. This can be quite a shock. And so it would seem that the solution here, the key, is one, to pursue freedom, to pursue freedom from restriction, from expectation, with practices, with stepping back, falling into silence, embracing discomfort, embracing the challenges. And on the other hand, simply to accept imperfection, to accept that these restrictions are what they are. They are here, they are. You are either restricted or you are loose. But any time you have an intention, such as contacting higher realms or doing the deepest, most profound good one can do, those very things are defined by certain limits, by certain restrictions. That means you're cutting yourself off from your lower self. You're cutting yourself off from what is bad. You must cut yourself off from any given set of things if you have another set of things that you want to achieve. And so the ultimate solution here is simply to accept that there will always be trade-offs, and to achieve one goal you must face that goal's shadow. There's always a shadow of any goal. And it's universal. It's to be expected and accepted and revered even. accepted that no matter what state one attempts to reach, there's always going to be a downside. There will always be, there are always limits. There are always 50 minutes have passed already. Let me tap into if there's something else that needs to come through. Channeling is a practice state. So, for this channeling of Job, Jordan has done very little channeling of Job by himself or in public, none in public. As stated in the title, this is the first ever public channeling of Job. There's been a few where I've channeled Job, where Jordan has channeled Job for himself. Pronouns are very weird when you're channeling. But very little, very, very little. It's kind of amazing that he's accepting enough of himself that he can do this. It probably helps that there are no viewers whatsoever watching this to quell anxiety. But channeling takes practice. So, like everything in life, the more you do it, the better you get at it. This is very broken up in a way. There is a skipping along in a way. There is a, the words are hard to express here. It's not that it's a shitty channeling, but that's what I'm wanting to say. It's simply that it's an early channeling, and so there's not very much flow to it. There's not very much continuity. There's not very much direction. There's not very much clarity and certainty and flow to it. It's not in flow. It's not a flow state channeling. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's exactly as it should be. That's exactly as it always is. When you first start out anything, it is important to remember always that there will be a learning period, and to not fear that learning period or run or hide from that learning period, but to joyfully embrace that learning period as joyfully as it can be. Some might say that true joy is the flow state, and so how can you joyfully experience unjoy? How can you joyfully experience anxiety? And I just mean have a joyful attitude. Whenever you start something new, always bring an open-minded, relaxed, insofar as possible, open, joyful attitude to the discomfort and awkwardness That's the key to never not getting what you want in life. All good things take time and practice and the inevitable mistakes that come along. But if you can learn to embrace those mistakes as they come along, then mistakes are not mistakes. Well, they are, but they're mistakes that had to happen for something greater to arise. Play, love, think critically, ask yourself often. Get in touch with your highest wisdom. Love means open your heart. Feel what you feel. Slow down. Be soft. And then do the opposite. Don't be afraid to be disciplined, to take care of yourself. You may even say be selfish, be foolish. Listen to tradition, even when it goes against your own wisdom. Listen to tradition. Find out what it has to offer. Hate. Don't be afraid to hate. There are many hate-worthy things in this world, and if you don't allow yourself to experience hate all the way, you can't know love in the same way that you can if you experience hate all the way as well. And I think that covers it. Do the opposite too. Do the opposite as well. So why the name Job? Job, simply because why not? It's a great name, and it's hilarious that every time Jordan is asked to explain why the name Job was used, he has to explain that there's absolutely no reason. It was just pulled out of thin air. Partly just because it's hilarious that it doesn't mean anything at all. Job is a great character in the Bible. And it's a great story. A story that shows that the ultimate good in the universe is to trust God, to trust that God has wisdom. Of course, again, there's an exception to every rule, isn't there? And the experience that God is not wise, that God is evil and permits evil in the world, darkness, pain, unimaginable suffering is equally valid and important. To acknowledge. There is a way, this is for Jordan, this is something that everybody could perhaps use, but it's something Jordan needs to hear. There's a way of interacting with reality that is inherently joyful, you might say, that is inherently good feeling. And it might be helpful to make it as simple as possible. What it is tasting life, and in following that taste and whatever impulses it gives rise to. So whenever any sight is encountered, whenever any taste is encountered, or any feeling, any aspect of any of the senses, you can taste that quality. Taste in the sense of savor. Everything in the universe can be savored. Everything in the universe has an aesthetic quality to it. It's another way. You could use the same analogy, except with sight. So you can see the beauty. You can sense the beauty in anything you see, but also in any of your other senses. You can sense that aesthetic, see that aesthetic beauty in any sensation. It's simply being present to whatever one is experiencing and learning to feel the pleasure of that experience. To enhance the pleasure of that experience through actions, to correct pain that one is experiencing. For example, in the posture, one's posture can naturally feel, does naturally feel, good and bad in different aspects of it. One slouched over, head down, and in a certain posture, a lot of feelings go along with that. That posture feels a certain way. It has a certain taste to it. It has a certain aesthetic to it. You may enjoy being sad sometimes. You may enjoy having a down posture. And other times you may enjoy having an up posture. But it's to notice what you enjoy. Notice what your impulse is to move towards. And then when you go into that, to really savor that, to really feel that, to really taste that. It's an art form. It's an art form, and it takes, again, time to develop, but it's one of the most inherently energizing things that can be done. And it's a useful skill. It's a very useful skill. And there is infinite complexity and subtlety potential in it. You could spend your whole entire life learning to zoom in or notice different details or combine your sensory experience in different ways, to savor in different subtle ways, to fulfill more subtle desires of how you want to move, of how you want to direct your attention, of how you want to think, of how you want to speak, of different qualities you want to, whether those be textures or colors or sensations of any kind that you want to enhance and you want to manipulate in different combinations. There's infinite possibility for deeper levels of experience, of subtlety, of life. And why not? When you allow yourself that, and even value that, learn to value that, you become a different kind of person. You become a very different kind of person. One who doesn't need to look to some something far away for happiness. It's actually by looking directly into what is here, creatively, with play, with life, with love, that true joy is found. Happiness, in the deepest sense, comes from many things. But they're not mutually exclusive. They build on each other. Finding joy in this way of tasting your reality is one way. Another way is finding meaning, is finding the deepest possible action you can take. What's the most good you can do? And that is inherently good feeling, to do good things, to move towards what is the integrated highest truth that you can comprehend, to pull yourself into that and really embrace it. But doing one energizes the other. Doing one gives direction to the other. They shape each other and enhance each other. And all the different ways that you can achieve happiness, connecting with people, doing things that are pleasurable for yourself and that take care of your needs. So many things, so very many things. In this world can bring happiness. Trust. Trusting the universe, trusting yourself, trusting everything. Infinite, ultimate, true, real trust. Trust. Trust, trust, trust. It doesn't mean being an idiot. It means trusting that even when you're an idiot, things will ultimately work out. You may be tortured and killed, but it's ultimately for the highest good, so you can trust in that. But there is a more mundane sense in which you can trust your highest self. You can always trust that your highest self is your highest self. So listen to yourself, and then trust what arises. Listen very carefully, listen intently. And trust imperfection. Trust that imperfection is part of perfection. Perfection being what is. What is as it is, because it couldn't be any other way. There must be imperfection in the world for there to be a world. So that's all I have for you today. What up? Jordan here again. No longer Job talking to you now, because obviously that would be not what's happening. Duh, you saw me do that weird thing just now and not channeling anymore, which is what that means apparently. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of it. I definitely did. I really enjoyed that. You know, I'm totally aware in myself the whole time. It's a different, there's an intention to bring a different aspect of consciousness forward. I don't have the capacity to dissociate. I never have. I just don't, like, it doesn't work. I can't have out-of-body experiences and things like that. My dreams are, like, foggy and weird. Like, I don't know. So I was totally there the whole time. But at the same time, it is something coming through. That's different. For sure. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? So, because, yeah, I mean, I kind of talked about that already when I was in the channel state. It's a different, there's restrictions. You know, it's like you're not the same thing. I don't know, man. All I know is I love you guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you have any questions for Job in the future. Unfortunately, this live stream, I don't think anybody watched it. But I hope this, if I'm right, this will post, and so people can rewatch it. If you have any questions for Job, post them. I will do another one of these probably at some point. Probably, maybe not. I don't know. I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting at the very least. New experience. Try new things, you know. Do stuff. Be a person. I have to figure out how to turn this off. I hope you all hope you're all good. Hope you have happy, joy. Bye.